Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive where we take those deep dives into all sorts of fascinating topics, and today is no exception.
Definitely not.
Before we get started though, a friendly reminder, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. And of course, that little bell icon. Yeah, click that so you won't miss any of our deep dives. Now, today we're heading to India.
Sounds exciting.
It is. We're going to explore the world of wildlife conservation in India. Super relevant for anyone, really. Whether you're prepping for the UPSC, specifically that Environment and Ecology part in GS3, or maybe you're a student just curious about the world.
It's for everyone, really, even if you just love animals.
Totally. And we've got some great sources lined up all about different conservation projects in India, the challenges that some species are facing, and even how India is involved in global conservation efforts.
Yeah, some really insightful stuff.
So let's
Yeah.
jump right in, shall we? And what better place to start than with the absolute icon, Project Tiger?
Oh,
Launched way back in 1973, it's seriously credited with, saving India's tigers from extinction.
it's a true success story for sure. And it's really interesting how they approach it. It's not just about, focusing on individual tigers.
Oh, so it's more than just protecting each tiger.
Right. They look at the whole ecosystem, like
Wow.
creating these safe havens for the tigers and all their prey too, through what they call a core buffer strategy. So imagine this. You have a core area, super protected, barely any human activity allowed, letting the tigers really thrive.
Makes sense.
Then around that, you have a buffer zone. Some sustainable activities are allowed there, but it's like a transition area from the protected core out to where humans are.
So like a layered approach.
Exactly. And that helps ensure the tigers can survive long term.
That makes a lot of sense, a multi-layered approach. Very cool.
Mm.
But I'm curious, how do they even know how many tigers there are? They don't exactly walk around with, name tags.
Haha, true. Well, that's where the tiger census comes in. Every 4 years, they do this amazing process. They track pug marks, those paw prints, which are unique, kind of like our fingerprints. They can tell individual tigers apart.
Wow.
And they also use camera traps, those hidden cameras that take pictures and videos of tigers in their natural habitat. It gives them so much information about their behavior and movements.
That's pretty amazing. It's like being a wildlife detective. Speaking of amazing, did you know India actually doubled its tiger population? Way ahead of schedule, too, like the 2022 target set by the St. Petersburg Declaration. That's going to be a huge win for conservation.
Huge. And now India has like 70% of the world's tigers. A real testament to all the hard work and collaboration they put in.
All right, so from the, I guess you could say, kings of the jungle, let's move on to another gentle giant, the elephant. And they're not just super cool to look at, they're vital to the ecosystem, right?
Oh, definitely. Elephants are like what they call ecological engineers. They really shape the landscape, creating clearings in the forests, which actually helps other species. And they're always on the move, which helps spread seeds around, making sure there are lots of different plants.
Huh. Never thought of it like that.
They even dig water holes, and those provide water for tons of other animals, especially when it's dry.
So they really do live up to that engineer title. And how's India doing when it comes to protecting these, what did you call them, ecosystem architects?
Architects, yeah. So back in 1992, they started Project Elephant. It's not just about individual elephants, it's also about making sure their habitats are safe and protecting these really important elephant corridors.
Elephant corridors. What are those?
Imagine them like pathways, connecting different parts of the elephant's habitat. Sometimes those habitats get fragmented. So these corridors let elephants move freely between them so they don't get isolated, and they can always find food and water. It's really crucial for them to survive in the long run.
So it's like building highways, but for elephants.
Exactly.
Very cool. It's so interesting how India is thinking about the needs of these animals across such a huge area.
Yeah.
Now, deep divers, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about a species that's, well, maybe not as glamorous, but just as important. Vultures.
Yeah, vultures definitely don't get as much love, but they're essential for a healthy ecosystem.
I think I've heard them called like nature's cleanup crew or something.
Exactly. They're scavengers, which means they eat dead animals. Which might sound kind of gross, but it's actually super important. It prevents diseases from spreading and basically keeps the environment clean.
Ah, right. So it all comes back to balance. But sadly, I know their numbers have been dropping dramatically.
Yeah, that's a big problem. And one of the main culprits is this drug called diclofenac.
Diclofenac.
Yeah, it was used as a painkiller for livestock, like cows. But when vultures ate the carcasses of those animals, it caused kidney failure in the birds, led to a lot of deaths.
That's so sad. So what's being done to help them?
Well, India has this action plan for vulture conservation. It's all about bringing them back. Part of it is setting up vulture safe zones, basically areas where diclofenac is banned. And they're also creating breeding centers and rescue centers to help increase the population and care for injured birds.
It's amazing to see how much effort is going into protecting these, unsung heroes of the ecosystem. All right, let's switch gears again. We've been in the jungles, but now let's head up to the snowy peaks of the Himalayas, the home of the elusive snow leopard.
Ah, now those are truly magnificent creatures. They're so well adapted to that harsh environment. It's incredible.
I can only imagine how hard they are to track and study in that terrain.
Oh, they're masters of camouflage. They blend right into the rocks. But back in 2009, India launched Project Snow Leopard, specifically to protect them and their habitat. And what's interesting is it's really closely tied to another initiative called Project Secure Himalaya.
So it's not just about the snow leopards themselves, it's about the whole Himalayan region.
Exactly. They realize that the health of the whole ecosystem is crucial for the snow leopards to survive. They're looking at things like climate change, unsustainable development, and even conflicts between humans and wildlife.
So it's like a multi-pronged approach, recognizing that everything is interconnected, which makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Okay, we've been in the forests, we climbed the mountains, and now I think it's time to dive into the world of marine conservation. What's India doing to protect all the incredible marine life they have?
Well, one really cool initiative is Project Sea Turtle. It's all about protecting sea turtles, especially the olive ridley. They're famous for their mass nesting events. They call them aribatas.
Aribatas.
Yeah, thousands of turtles come ashore all at once to lay their eggs. It's a pretty amazing sight.
It sounds magical, but I bet those nesting events also make them very vulnerable.
Definitely. Poaching and habitat loss are big threats. That's why India launched Operation Save Kurma to fight against the illegal turtle trade.
Operation Save Kurma. I gotta say, I love these names. Shows you don't have to be, super serious all the time, even when you're doing important conservation work.
A little creativity helps.
So from tigers to turtles, it seems like India is really stepping up when it comes to protecting wildlife. What other initiatives are out there?
Well, there's Project Crocodile, which started back in 1975, protects all three of India's crocodilian species. And then there's Project Hangle. That one focuses on the Kashmir stag, which is critically endangered and only found in a few places in Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh.
Hangul. I've never even heard of that animal before. This is why I love these deep dives. You learn something new every time.
There's always more to discover. And every single species, even the ones we might not think are that important, play a role in keeping our ecosystems balanced.
Well said. So we've really covered a lot in just this first part of our deep dive. Tigers, elephants, vultures, snow leopards, sea turtles, crocodiles, and even the Hangul.
Quite a journey.
Hangul. Yeah. And we haven't even touched on the incredible Ganges River dolphin yet. India's dedication to protecting all this biodiversity is seriously impressive.
It really is. There's just so much to talk about.
Exactly. And we'll be right back to delve even deeper into wildlife conservation in India. Stay with us, deep divers.
And welcome back. As we continue exploring wildlife conservation in India, I think it's worth talking about breeding programs.
Oh, right. Like what they do in zoos and sanctuaries, right?
Exactly. India has a bunch of these programs that have been really successful, especially for endangered species. They're carefully managing the animals in captivity, making sure there's genetic diversity.
That makes sense.
And that helps them produce offspring that could eventually be released into the wild. It's kind of like a safety net for those species that are struggling out there in their natural habitats.
A fighting chance, so to
Yeah.
speak. Can you give us any specific examples?
Sure. The Padmajan Naidu Himalayan Zoological Park up in Darjeeling, they've done amazing work with red pandas and snow leopards, two species we've already talked about. And then further south, the Irignar Anna Zoological Park in Chennai, they have a program for the lion-tailed macaque.
The what?
The lion-tailed macaque. It's a primate that's only found in the Western Ghats. Those are mountains in southwestern India that are like a biodiversity hotspot. Tons of unique species there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and these are just a couple of examples. There are loads of breeding programs working hard all over India trying to protect these incredible animals.
It's really inspiring to see that kind of dedication. So they're kind of like creating an ark to help these animals survive, so to speak.
Exactly. And speaking of fascinating creatures, have you heard of the Ganges river dolphin?
Oh, yeah. Isn't that the one that makes that like soo-soo sound?
That's the one. It's actually India's national aquatic animal, but sadly, they're endangered. Habitat loss is a big problem, plus pollution and accidental fishing. They're actually blind. Rely on echolocation to find their way around and hunt in the, well, kind of murky waters of the Ganges.
Wow, really? Blind. That's incredible how they've adapted to survive like that.
It is, but it also makes them super sensitive to any disturbances in their environment.
I can imagine. So what's being done to protect them?
Well, India has created several sanctuaries specifically for them, and there's a lot of work being done to clean up the river and make sure they have a good habitat. And there's a real focus on getting local communities involved too.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. The people who live along the river, they know so much about the dolphins. Getting them involved in conservation is key.
Totally. Makes sense if you're going to protect a species, the people living alongside them are the best resource.
Exactly. Conservation works best when everyone's working together. Local communities, scientists, policymakers, and conservation organizations.
It's all about finding that common ground, creating a future where both people and wildlife can thrive, right? All right, I feel like we've covered so much ground already, from tigers and elephants to that hangul you told us about, and now these incredible river dolphins.
We have, and we've really only scratched the surface of all the amazing species in India and the efforts to protect them.
So true. India's commitment to conservation is seriously impressive. But what about outside of India? What's the country doing on the international stage when it comes to conservation?
Oh, they're definitely involved globally. A great example is something called SAWAN, the South Asia Wildlife Enforcement Network.
What's that?
It's like this team made up of 8 South Asian countries: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. They all work together to stop the illegal wildlife trade in the region.
Wow, a whole task force.
Yeah.
Makes sense, though. Animals don't care about borders.
Exactly. It's all about cooperation. Sharing information, intelligence on poachers and traffickers. They run training programs together and really try to disrupt those criminal networks.
That's so crucial, especially with wildlife trafficking being such a huge problem, a multi-billion-dollar industry.
It is. It's really encouraging to see India stepping up and taking a leading role in these global efforts. Protecting biodiversity is something we all have to work on together all over the world.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads us to a really important point. Conservation isn't just about protecting one species here or there. It's about making sure the planet is healthy, balanced for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It's realizing that we're all connected. Protecting nature is ultimately about protecting ourselves.
Exactly. It's about understanding that human well-being is completely tied to the health of the environment.
Well said. Okay, so we've explored a lot in this deep dive into wildlife conservation in India. But before we wrap things up completely, I think it's worth taking a moment to really think about what we've learned.
Yeah, a moment to reflect on all the challenges and all the triumphs we've discussed.
And we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into wildlife conservation in India. It's been a whirlwind tour, hasn't it?
It really has. We've gone from the depths of the Ganges to the heights of the Himalayas and everything in between.
Right. Before the break, we were talking about India's role in global conservation efforts, like that SAWAN initiative. It really shows how interconnected conservation is, all around the world. So as we close out this episode, what would you say is the key takeaway, especially for our UPSC aspirants who might be listening?
Well, I think the biggest thing is India has this incredible biodiversity, but it faces a lot of challenges. But despite that, the country has made incredible strides in protecting its natural heritage.
That's for sure.
All those initiatives we talked about, Project Tiger, Project Elephant, all of them, they really show how dedicated India is to conservation. And for those UPSC folks, understanding these projects, their successes, the struggles they face, that's all super important for tackling that environment and ecology section, the GS3.
Totally. It gives me hope seeing all the passion and the innovative ways people are working to protect these animals. Really inspiring.
Absolutely. But we can't forget, this is an ongoing process, right? Conservation is a marathon, not a sprint. It takes constant work, adapting to new challenges, working together. And it's not just on governments and organizations, it's on all of us.
Couldn't agree more. Whether it's being responsible when we travel, reducing our own impact on the environment, even just talking about these issues and spreading awareness, we all have a part to play.
Exactly. Small actions, when you multiply them by millions of people, can make a huge difference. Just imagine what we could achieve if everyone was mindful of their impact on the planet.
So deep divers, as we wrap up our deep dive into wildlife conservation in India, let's take this inspiration with us. Let's remember that we're all part of this incredible web of life.
Hmm.
And protecting the planet's biodiversity, well, it's not just a responsibility, it's a privilege.
It is. We're incredibly lucky to share this planet with so many amazing creatures, and we have to make sure they're around for future generations to enjoy.
Couldn't said it better myself. A huge thank you to you, expert speaker, for sharing your knowledge and your passion with us today. It's been a pleasure. And to all our amazing deep divers out there, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future deep dives. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring.